Okay, so today, as you all saw just an hour or so ago, President Obama announced that, pardon me, President Biden. Whoa! That is news. I know. We're going back, not forwards. We got to go forwards. Conversation. I can tell you, as I mentioned before, the president has spoken to Governor DeWine of ONC, and he continued to make sure that he was talking to to the governors of Pennsylvania.
The president has been traveling the world, pledging to help other countries solve their energy issues. The latest one was with Poland, pledging to build power plants or help them build power plants. How come there's no pivot in energy policy here at home to help the inflation that we're seeing here?
Have you read the Inflation Reduction Act?
Still waiting.
I mean, the Inflation Reduction, the Inflation Reduction Act does just that. And the Inflation Reduction Act is so important because it deals with energy policy, lowering the cost. And we're seeing that his economic policy is working. The Inflation Reduction Act, not only that it does it lower, and that shows how fiscally responsible this president is. I got to keep going. Go ahead, April.
Next week, the student loan case is going to be before the Supreme Court. I'm wondering how confident is the administration feeling about its position on that case, and whether there's any sort of backup plan should the Supreme Court not.
We feel very confident in our legal process here.
What about the idea of any sort of backup plan?
Right now, we just feel very confident. Look, we have to remember what the student loan plan means and why the president put that forward. It's to help tens of millions of. We see this as an important policy that is going to help millions, tens of millions of Americans across the country who need it, who need that opportunity to start a family, who need that opportunity to buy a home. And so it is unfortunate to us that Republicans are out there, Republicans officials across the country are out there trying to stop something, trying to stop a policy that would really help everyday Americans who.
On the search for Fed Vice Chair, can you talk about the decision-making process there with regard to how the president is considering diversity? There's been some pressure from senators to name a Latino candidate, for example. How important is it to the president to name a woman or a person of color to that job?
When it comes to diversity, you've heard this from the president, you've heard this from me, you've heard this from many of us here. Diversity and representation is really important to this president, and the cabinet is majority people of color for the first time in history. The cabinet is majority female for the first time in history. A majority of White House senior staff identify as female. 40% of White House senior staff identify as part of the racially diverse communities, and a record 7 assistants to the president are openly LGBTQ+. So again, this is something that the president prides himself on. I mean, the trip that President Biden to Kiev, as many of you reported on, was historic. It was brave. Many of you talked about how we heard the sirens wailing in the background as the president was on the ground. Remember